Hey everyone, it's your instructor, Ryan Bradshaw, and this week we're talking in business law about Chapter 11, which is antitrust laws, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. I do want to remind you that open registration is now happening, and you need to make sure that you've reached out to your advisor so that you can go ahead and get in the spring classes. They're filling up fast. I've already got a couple classes that are full. And so please be sure to do that. All right, so let's talk about antitrust laws a little bit and what they're for. So in the late 1800s, concerned with the kind of merger as well as other attempts by large companies to create monopolies or to control the market led to state and federal lawmakers to take steps to reduce the risk associated with these types of practices. So during the late 1800s, the United States became concerned about the development of corporate monopolies dominating mining and manufacturing. Then the Civil War marked the beginning of a large advances in industrialization. And so the problem was that the growth occurred so rapidly that supply exceeded demand. The outcome increased competition, and many companies sought to reduce the number of competitors through forms of restraint of trade, such as price fixing, monopolies, and mergers. And so those types of practices are basically anti-capitalistic because, well, if you think about monopolies, there's this one entity that controls or dominates the market. It really limits basically options and competition for consumers. And so imagine that one car company dominated all of car manufacturing. What would happen? Everybody goes to that one car manufacturer. Well, then the manufacturer says, well, we can kind of relax standards. We can, cheapen these things and, stop paying as much for this because we dominate. And if a competitor comes into the market, we'll crush them and we'll continue to dominate. And so it really, monopolies do serve a kind of a bad function in our capitalistic system. And so some competitors were large, more powerful ones than others, and they sought to limit the competition in the market by taking steps to reduce the number of smaller companies who were trying to compete. Some larger companies banded together to create business trusts, meaning that, hey, like in Detroit in the early part of the 20th century, they dominated the auto manufacturing. And there's a great movie called Tucker. If you ever get a chance to watch it, it talks about this other competing car company that wanted to come in with new innovations, new car design, really innovative stuff. But these large manufacturers, General Motors, they had this relationship with the other large manufacturers. They said, we're not going to allow other small players to come into the market to take some of our market share. And so these trusts are not a good thing. And so we came up with antitrust laws. So unfair business practices, companies try to create situations that would drive some competitors out of business while solidifying their own share of the market. This effort resulted in mergers and consolidation practices that placed the largest share of the industries under control of just a few here, thereby increasing their power. And so since the trusts were able to fix prices and could afford to take some losses, they would drive down prices until competitors were forced out of business because they could not afford to operate at lower rates. And so that's how they crushed their competitors. And so unfair business practices did not reside solely with the business trust. Issues also occurred in agreements between competitors, contracts entered into between sellers and buyers, and practices that created or maintained cartels, monopolies, and mergers. There were no specific laws that regulated these practices, so the courts were not entirely sure how to deal with them. So the courts used the rule of reason as the standard. The rule of reason explored the goal of the contract, which was considered either naked restraint or ancillary restraint. Naked restraint occurs as contracts promote a general restraint of competition. If the restraint was clearly the goal of the long-term impact without boundaries, it was considered to be naked restraint. Ancillary restraint occurs, or ancillary, however you pronounce it, occurs as the restriction is limited in time and geography. With ancillary restraint, the restraint would be short-term and limited in scope. the courts tended to frown upon naked restraint, but were less consistent with ancillary restraints. Initially, there did not seem to be a comprehensive common law applied similarly from state to state. The problem was concerning enough to warrant a solution, and in 1890, the first antitrust law was enacted. So antitrust laws are regulate economic competition in an effort to maintain fair trade practices. They were created to prevent the restraint on trade created by trusts and other large company practices. These restraints often resulted in price fixing, control of production, and control of geographical markets. Many states recognize these outcomes as a threat to fair business practices. The federal government also recognized this issue was developed antitrust laws in 1887 as a result of the Standard Oil Trust that was formed. The Standard Oil Trust occurred as oil companies transferred their stocks to trustees to create a more powerful block of oil companies that prevented other oil companies from effectively competing with them. And so the first antitrust law created was the Sherman Act in 1890, which became the basis for subsequent antitrust law. The Sherman Act was a good start, but it was not comprehensive enough to prevent trust, and large companies continued to exert strong control over industries. At the turn of the century, a few large companies controlled almost half of all the nation's manufacturing assets. It became evident that more legislation was necessary. President Theodore Roosevelt dubbed himself a trustbuster and began a campaign to create more effective legal endeavors. Additional antitrust acts were passed in 1914, including the Clayton Act and the Federal Trade Commission Act. These acts are still in effect, and since 1914 they have been amended by the Congress to continue to expand upon and solidify the coverage. It is estimated that antitrust laws have saved consumers millions of dollars a year as they prohibit business practices that unfairly raise prices on goods and services. And so there's another piece of this to go into very briefly. And so what do antitrust laws do? The three main ones, once again, are the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Clayton Act, and the Federal Trade Commission Act. So antitrust laws were created to prevent unlawful mergers and business practices that could lead to restraint of trade by others. The laws themselves are somewhat general and allow the courts the ability to make decisions on these practices based on changing times and markets. The three main antitrust laws, as I mentioned, are the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Clayton Act, the Federal Trade Commissions Act. So the Sherman Act was passed in 1890 and focused on trade restraint and were considered unreasonable. This act did not prohibit all forms of trade restraint, since the courts did not see temporary limited restraints as an issue at the time. A partnership agreement that limited trade to certain areas for certain partners was considered acceptable. The courts deemed some trade restrictions as unreasonable, such as price fixing. In some cases, the violation was so apparent that the violation was considered prima facie, or so evident that it automatically satisfied the unreasonable standard. And I believe the Latin is at face value. So if you look at it, you knew that this was evident. The Sherman Act prohibits all contracts and interacts that unreasonably restrain foreign trade and trade between states. This prohibition does not mean that companies cannot lower prices on goods in an effort to outsell the competition. Doing so would be considered fair competition and trade. However, when a company is able to suppress the ability of others to compete through some intentional unfair business practices, such as forming agreements with competitors to set prices, it is considered a violation. So I'm going to go down to precedents just to speak up to that for a second. We should know what precedent is. Precedent is prior law that has been set, and so that allows for you to look back in case law and understand what was done before and how it could be applied today. The Clayton Act was passed in 1914. The Clayton Act is a civil statute rather than a criminal statute, meaning that it carries civil penalties rather than prison sentences. It primarily focuses on the unfair mergers and acquisitions. This act sought to create more specific language to help the courts reduce unfair trade practices. As such, it established 4 acts as illegal, but not criminal, meaning that it will be tried as civil cases. the four acts were price discrimination, which occurs at the same product is sold to different buyers for different prices. Exclusive dealing contracts, which requires buyers to purchase only from one business and not a competitor. Corporate mergers, which results in the acquisitions of competing companies. And interlocking directorates, which are boards of competing companies with common members sitting on each of the boards. The four acts would be considered illegal when they created monopolies or substantially less competition. And then lastly, the Federal Trade Commission Act. The Federal Trade Commission Act, FTC Act, also passed in 1914, focuses on unfair methods of competition and deceptive acts or practices that impacted commerce. All acts that violate the Sherman Act also violate the FTC. The FTC Act works to fill in the gaps of the unfair practices by condemning all anti-competitive behavior not otherwise covered in the federal antitrust laws. And so I'll give you some other content on this. One remedy that the FTC or DOJ can seek is divestiture, which forces the company to give up one or more of its operating functions. Another remedy is dissolution, which would terminate the right of a partnership to exist. Some exemptions, there are limitations on antitrust law that have been introduced over the years. These include labor. A labor union can organize and bargain within the bounds of antitrust laws. Agricultural and fisheries. Collective co-ops of agricultural groups or fisheries can form as long as they do not engage in restraint of trade. Foreign trade. Companies can join forces in cooperative activities involving foreign trade exports as long as trade within the United States is not restrained. And then lastly, cooperative research and production. Small businesses can cooperatively work together on research and joint ventures. And so, this is a brief introduction and review of Chapter 11, Antitrust Laws. This was not meant to replace the reading, so please go back and read this chapter yourself. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to me. I look forward to talking to you, and don't forget about your homework. Have a great rest of your week, and don't forget to register. Talk to you soon.